Hey everyone, good evening. Megan Reckling here. Gonna give it a couple of minutes while people tune in. I am excited to join you tonight and talk about the package that was proposed earlier today by our Secretary of State. So gonna give it just a minute or so as people hop on. As always, if you guys can just drop a comment, say hi, let me know you're here. That also lets me know that I can read the comments. And then if you have any questions as we start to talk about all of these proposed changes by the Secretary of State, let me know. I would love to try to answer as many questions as I possibly can. So I see a few people are hopping on, and I am excited to get started. Most of you guys know we definitely have to work on election integrity, not only here in Michigan, but across the United States. And what election integrity looks like to the Democrats is very different than what election integrity looks like to us as constitutional conservative Republicans. The Secretary of State proposed an entire litany of things today. I watched her press conference twice because when she had her deputy go through the legislative changes that she was proposing, they were going so fast that I could hardly even keep up. So I had to go back and start to listen to them again. Oddly enough, I'm going to be honest, there is probably 3 points out of the over a dozen or so that she proposed that I actually agree with. One of them I personally have been advocating for a couple of years now. So it's quite interesting to see what she included in the plan. So the Secretary of State broke her proposal down into 3 different parts. The first part being the accessibility of voters. And she kind of has described this whole legislative package as the ability to advance and protect the accessibility, infrastructure, and the security of our election system. So that is really how she is PRing this, is we are here to protect and expand the accessibility, the infrastructure, and the security of our elections. So the first part that the secretary got into is the accessibility of our election, and she proposed 8 different changes to this. Let me take it back one step. I have helped work under, in the legislative branch, a number of Secretary of States, and I have been involved all the way back to when Terry Lynn Land was our Secretary of State, through when Ruth Johnson was our Secretary of State, and now we have Jocelyn Benson. I have seen the Secretary of State's work on policy with the legislature, but I have never seen the Secretary have an active entire legislative platform that fundamentally changes our election system. And that is what this would do here. Michigan adopted back in 2018 Proposal 3, which had sweeping fundamental changes, and that was adopted in our Constitution. But now the Secretary is coming back asking for an additional legislative package that's going to additionally change our elections even more. So accessibility. She proposed 8 changes to ensure that voters in Michigan have accessibility to the elections. First and foremost, she wants to statutorily require that absentee ballot applications get mailed out to every registered voter every federal election cycle. Federal election cycle is every 2 years. So she wants AV applications, exactly what she did for the August primary election last year and the general election last year. She wants the Secretary of State's office to mail out absentee ballot applications to every registered voter every 2 years. So that's the first change she wanted. The second one is she wants absentee ballots that are postmarked on election day, but received shortly thereafter to be counted after the election. A number of the things that I'm going to go through tonight that she proposed are things that we had court cases on prior to the November 2020 election. These first 2 things, there were court cases on. Under current state law, I believe that it is illegal for the Secretary of State to mail out absentee ballots. There was a lawsuit on that, and the courts ruled that it was legal for her to do so. What is alarming about the court ruling is they did not keep their ruling just to COVID. So it did not define that the Secretary of State could only mail out absentee ballots during a pandemic, which to me is problematic. I don't think they should be allowed to do that. In fact, I think we should even go a step further. You oftentimes see like local Republican parties, local Democrat parties, the AFL-CIO, the NAACP. You see organizations like that mail out absentee ballots, applications, to all of their members or people who they want to make sure vote. I actually think we should require a disclaimer that are put on those, that those are not being mailed by an election official, so that the voter knows that that's not coming from their election official. And I think that all election officials should be prohibited from putting their name on those pieces of information. I think that that is a way that the Secretary of State can use state dollars to campaign with, by having her name on all of these applications that are going out to the residents. So we have two things so far. Require that AV ballots be mailed to everyone, every federal election cycle. 2, she wants ballots that are postmarked on election day and received shortly thereafter, that's the terminology she used, shortly thereafter, to be counted. 3, she wants to establish early in voting person at your clerk's office or a satellite office prior to election day. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm soft on that one. I am not as opposed to early voting as I am the next one or the next couple of. So she wants to make the election day a federal holiday or a state holiday so that everybody gets it off. She wants to allow overseas service members and their spouses the ability to vote electronically. And don't worry, I'm going to go back to early voting. We're going to talk about that in the next section. I'm not going to just tell you I'm soft on it and not explain why. She wants to, so we've got making Election Day a holiday. We've got overseas military people and their spouses voting electronically, returning their ballots electronically. She wants to require individuals or election officials to provide translated election material where a significant non-English speaking community lives. She wants to provide funding for clerks to ensure compliance with the ADA and to assist people with disabilities. And she wants to allow paid transportation services for people that have issues getting to the polls. And I can already see the comments coming in related to mail-in voting or absentee voting. Here's the deal, guys. We just have to be very honest about this. The residents of Michigan in our Constitution adopted no reason absentee voting. The only way that that is going to go away, the legislature can't change that, the Secretary of State can't change that, the courts can't change that. The only way the residents of Michigan will get rid of no reason absentee voting is for the residents of Michigan to vote to eliminate it again. That is literally the only way that that happens. The way they get to vote on that can happen two different ways. One, the legislature can put a resolution forward, which is going to require Democrat votes, and after they vote on it, it can go on the ballot for the residents to vote on. Or 2, just like the Unlock Michigan petition and the original Promote the Vote that passed, you can collect signatures, go through the referendum process, and after your signatures are verified, that can go on the ballot. But that is the only way, by a majority vote of the residents of Michigan, are we going to get rid of no reason absentee voting. That is literally the only way it's going to go away. It's in our Constitution, and our Constitution is really clear how constitutional amendments have to be made. And so no reason absentee, this is a big reason why you hear me advocate all the time. Know what you're voting for. If it's a constitutional amendment, read it again, and then most of the time vote no. Enshrining things in our Constitution is normally very bad. There's very little that should be going in our Constitution, and there's a lot that should be going in our statutes. And Promote the Vote, Proposal 3, that I did a video on a couple of weeks ago, all of that went into our state constitution. And so it's really not easy to change no reason absentee voting. All that the legislature can do now is put certain boxes around the safety parameters. And that's what they can try to do going forward. They can't eliminate no reason absentee without all of us voting at the ballot box to do that. Okay, so those are the 8 changes to accessibility. Require AV applications to go out, require ballots that are postmarked before the election day or on election day to be counted afterwards, establish early in-person voting, make our election day a holiday, overseas military and their spouses voting electronically, require the translation of election material, provide funding for clerks to ensure their compliance with the ADA, and allow paid transportation for people that want to get to the polls. Those are the 8 things around accessibility. Don't worry, guys, we're not done yet. We still have a number of items to go. Okay, so category number 2. Further strengthen our election infrastructure and support our local elected officials. So everything I'm about to talk about goes under the bucket of further strengthening our election infrastructure and support our local elected officials. And there are 5 things under here that she is proposing. Leanne, you need a 2/3 vote. We need a significant number of votes. We have a slim margin in the Senate and they have a slim margin in the House. We will need dozens, at least between the House and the Senate. We're talking 2 dozen or more Democrats to vote to put it on the ballot via the legislature instead of the people getting signatures for it. And let's be honest, Dems, when they vote 100% on a piece of legislation and then the governor vetoes it, they won't even override their own veto on that. So I really doubt they're going to vote in favor of any of this going on the ballot. Okay, 5 things under infrastructure. Point number 1, she wants to allow this past election, clerks in certain municipalities were allowed 1 day to process absentee ballots earlier. The Secretary of State is asking to make that permanent and asking to allow clerks 2 weeks to process absentee ballots. I am going to come back to this because the processing of absentee ballots ties in with my position on mail-in voting. And again, this is something I'm intrigued by. It's not something that I think we have to go running off a cliff and saying Michigan should vote early, but I want to explain to you why I think one is better than the other. Number 2, so she's asking for 2 weeks to process absentee ballots early. Number 2, she's asking for an extra week for that the local county canvases have to review the election. And that's intriguing. And it sounds like it is good to give the local county canvassing boards an extra week to process the election. And I'm going to sidetrack on the 5 things for this one specifically. And here, this is again, I'm talking about my position on this. Our Constitution and our laws all added together. Right now, all county canvassing boards in all 83 counties across Michigan have 4 canvassers, 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats. Those individuals are actually quasi-appointed by the individual parties. So when there is an opening on the Livingston County Board of Canvassers, if it is a Republican position, I, as the Republican Party chair, I actually get a letter from our clerk saying this person is either termed out or they decided not to run again or they've resigned and they take a Republican spot. Please provide me with a list of names of people that want to serve on the canvass or Republicans who want to be on the Board of Canvassers. And so I go and I provide our county clerk with a list of anywhere from 3 to 5 people who are Republicans who want to serve on the Board of Canvass. She then goes and conducts interviews and makes the final selection on who's going to serve on our Board of Canvassers. Same things happen with the Democrats. They get a letter, they have to provide 3 to 5 names, and then the county clerk will then appoint the Democrats to those elected positions. So here's my issue with giving our county canvassing boards an extra week. There are statutory deadlines that have to be made on both the state level and the federal level. Giving the local canvassing board an extra 7 days to certify the election, let's take the federal presidential election, for example. It doesn't push back the federal statutory deadline of when the state has to report their overall certified votes for electors to the federal government. It doesn't change things like on November 20th, our local elected officials get sworn into office. So even now, this cycle, we had elected officials across Michigan on November 20th that were being sworn into office with results that weren't fully certified all the way up through the top level yet. So when you push out the county canvas by a week, it doesn't change all the deadlines on the federal level that come after that. What I personally think is a better option is we should actually change the canvas number of people, and it should be based on population. So for example, it's absolutely ludicrous that Livingston County with 200,000 residents has the same exact number of canvassers that Wayne County has. There's absolutely no way they can get the work done. I believe they need more canvas members. So we should look at a system that takes the population of each county and says, counties above this population get 8 canvassers, below this get 4, and maybe some of them need 10 or 12. And so that's something that we should look to do, is stagger the number of canvassers on the boards versus giving them more time, because all you're doing when you give them more time is you're taking time away from somewhere else, whether it be the state canvas and their job is already scrunched, or whether it be something else on the back end. So that's why I have concerns specifically about that one. Okay, so under the protect our infrastructure, strengthen that, and help our elected officials, we've got, she wants to process AVs 2 weeks early. She wants to provide an extra week for the counties to canvass their election results. This one, I'm kind of intrigued to see the language on. I'll be honest. Allow recounts in precincts where common clerical errors occur. I'm very intrigued to see the details about what that means. Does that mean over in Wayne County, where 72% of the absentee counting boards were considered non-recountable because they were unbalanced? Does it mean over in, I think it's the Livonia area, where the clerk is being charged with some federal election felonies and she has a history of having issues? What specifically does it mean to allow recounts in precincts, and how does she define common clerical errors? So I'm intrigued by that point, but again, the devil is absolutely going to be in the details there. This one, I personally absolutely love. I have been advocating this for a while. Eliminate the August and the May elections and consolidate them into one election in June. And I very much support doing this. I think that moving our election dates in Michigan is fundamentally imperative moving forward. First and foremost, everybody who is with the school boards or schools is going to lob my head off for saying this. School districts love the May election. They love to put millages on the May election. Municipalities love to put millages on the May election. Why? Because rarely anybody votes in there. And if you get a smaller percentage of people that vote, that means you have to get a smaller percentage of yes votes. But here's why I think that this is really important to do. One, elections are becoming very expensive. Your township does not get a postage discount. Everything by law is required to be mailed first class. They have to pay the postage through the post office just like we do. So with the number of absentee ballots that are going out, and we're not just talking if the Secretary of State is mailing out absentee ballot applications. All of the local municipalities keep a permanent absentee ballot list. They have for years, where you can say, when it comes time for an election, send me an application. And frankly, I encourage people to put your name on that list. It doesn't mean you have to vote absentee, but what it does is it reminds people that an election is coming up. And let me tell you what, the Democrats have done a fantastic job of getting their people to sign up for absentee ballot applications. So what's going to happen? The May election is going to come around. A bunch of Democrats are going to get the application. A bunch of Republicans aren't. And then when our taxes are raised year after year after year after year, and we're pissed off, we're going to be able to look back and know why. So it's important that Republicans know there's an election coming up. We get out to vote so our taxes aren't raised and those other things on the May ballots aren't voted on. But because of the postage, our elections are becoming increasingly expensive. So instead of having a May and an August election, having a June election makes much more sense. Here is the other reason why I think this is really important. Proposal 3 back in 2018 changed the constitutional deadline for when ballots have to be mailed out. It is now a constitutional requirement that ballots be mailed out at least 45 days before the election to our military overseas individuals and just our military people on deployments so that they have time to fill out their ballots and get them sent in. So here's what this looks like. Start to do calendar math. You have currently, right now, you have you have the filing deadline in April. You get to the August primary, and then count backwards from November. The first Tuesday in November, count backwards 45 days. You're only a couple of weeks past August. So right now, as a candidate, what elections look like is I'm in a primary. I'm in a 6-way primary running against Elissa Slotkin. I have to spend a year and a half. I have to spend all the way up to August running against all of my primary opponents. All 6 of us. We're beating it out. We are trying to see who's going to be the nominee to defeat Elissa Slotkin. Jim Smith wins. Jim Smith wins the election, and he now has to run against a sitting incumbent congressional candidate who's sitting on a $5 million war chest. He has 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks to campaign before ballots start going out in the mail to people. There's literally, basically, no general election anymore. And so what fundamentally changing our election structure would be is it gives us a better primary, but it also gives all of those who come out of primaries on both sides, it's fair. There's one thing every candidate has in common, and that's time. And it gives everybody the ability to have a general election. All right. So Denise has asked, how do we verify the ID of voters and challenges to ballots? Okay, can I circle back on voter ID? And then there's another part in here that we'll talk about challenging of ballots, because that's a good question. So we've got, out of so far, election infrastructure, we've got 2 weeks prior, a week for the Board of Canvassers, allow recounts where errors happened, consolidate the May and August election into a June election, which I personally support doing. I think that that is a good change. I've actually advocated for that publicly for probably 2 years now. So I'll take credit for that. And then the 5th thing is to create a sustainable and sufficient funding stream for local clerks so they are properly resourced to handle the demands of modern elections. No, Monica, she's asking for 1 extra week for the canvass. So it's not just 1 week to canvass. She wants to add 1 extra week onto the time that local county canvassing boards already have. And so create a sustainable and sufficient funding stream for local clerks so that they are properly resourced to handle the demands of modern elections. What in the heck that means, I have no idea. Frankly, to me, as a conservative Republican, that means raise your taxes so we can give away more government money, to hire more people, and figure out how to do other stuff with your elections. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of details we have there. Now, so those are the 5 things under the infrastructure and helping our local elected officials. Now we get to the 3rd section of her thing, which is to ensure secure elections. So this is her 3rd point. So far we've done accessibility. We've done further strengthen our election infrastructure, support our elected officials, and now we're on to election integrity, or what they title ensure secure elections. And I'm using these titles for a reason, because I'm going to tie this into one other thing at the end here. So she's got 6 points under this. 1, if anybody is watching what is censoring, and let's be honest, I saw like this meme today and it had 5 fact checks under it. And it was like a little cartoon meme and I died laughing. So now she wants to, quote, prohibit deceptive election practices that deter or mislead voters. What does that mean? I mean, if that's not a frickin' Pandora's box for we're going to censor Republicans who are trying to tell people stuff about the election, I don't know what is, but that's definitely what that says to me. Prohibit deceptive election practices that deter or mislead voters. Got it. That'd be a no. That would be a hard no. Any Republican who considers that should walk out the door, because that should be an absolute heck no. Okay. I mean, it sounds good. Yes, we don't want to deter people. We don't want to mislead voters. But that is absolutely a way for them to control and censor what other people are saying about the election. Number 2, she wants to prohibit open carry of firearms within 100 feet of the polling day. Apparently, she has failed to read the Constitution, and she has never read the Second Amendment. Number 3, give election officials, this one's great, give election officials the ability to make one-time fixes to long-standing issues with the state voter list. I'm not sure about you guys, but for me, that raises a myriad of questions. What kind of long-standing issues are we talking about with our voter list that she, as the Secretary of State, can't fix herself? I am fairly confident that under the Federal Voting Rights Act, there are a number of things that she is supposed to be doing as Secretary of State to clean up the list. I am not sure what we need to do to allow now, I believe that we should give our county clerks the ability to access the QVF to clean up deceased voters, because right now what happens is when voters pass away who are not in county, they have to send those out to all of the township clerks. So we should have 83 county clerks updating deceased voters instead of over 2,200 local clerks doing it. That makes a lot. I think there might be over 1,200 between the cities, townships, and villages. That would make a lot more sense to have our county clerks doing a consistent cleanup of deceased voters. They should have that access. Versus what one-time fix do we need for long-standing issues? I don't know about you guys, but that one alone raises a ton of red flags. And I know our legislature on both sides is continuing to do oversight hearings on election stuff. Hopefully that is a question that they ask her, because she has now said publicly that there's long-standing issues with our voter list. I think we should all know what that is. Okay, require training standards for election challengers and election workers. This is something that I can actually agree with her on. I know that there are a number of you on. I helped sign up over 300 individuals to work on election day as poll challengers, as poll workers all across Michigan. I have asked a number of people, myself included, who has served as an election challenger. The training is very basic. It's a couple of hours long. You walk in the room and there you are tossed in a situation where you have to legally challenge ballots. And I ask a lot of them, I say, do you know really what reasons you are allowed to legally challenge a ballot? And most of them look at you and they go, I mean, I have the one or two basic things, but a lot of poll challengers really don't know when and where and what the proper process is. So I think the devil is in the details there. We have to make sure the training, who's going to pay for it, how is it going to be administered, whether that's done through the Secretary of State's office or we as a party do that. I do think that is something that we as a Republican Party should, even if it's not passed statutorily, we should absolutely do a better job this cycle moving forward of training our poll challengers. And shame on us if we don't do that. So require standards for election challengers and election workers. Update the technology requirements for election vendors and provide the tabulation machines and other technologies and material. I don't know, what does that mean? Update the security requirements for election vendors and provide the tabulation machines and other technologies and materials. Again, that's one that maybe sounds okay, but again, 100% the devils are going to be in the details. What does that mean? And let's be honest, in her press release and her press thing, all she did was release a couple of bullet points. They didn't have statutory proposed language. They didn't provide any of that. They didn't have draft bills. They literally just said, here's a couple of things we want to get done, pat on your head, thanks, go. So there are no details here to look into yet. Don't worry, when she proposes all of the bills, or she has them, I will personally read through. Let's see, 8 and 5 is 11 plus 8 is 19. I will read through all 19 proposals, and some of these are going to take multiple bills. I happen to know for a fact, because I've actually talked to people about it, if you want to condense the 2 election days, May and August, and change it to June, you need almost 200 legislative bills to do that. That's how many state laws you touch. Okay, so secure our elections. The last thing, number 6, and I don't support this, finally require a statewide risk limiting audit prior to the state certification of election results. Everybody's going to hear the word audit and they're going to go, yay, that's going to be awesome. So here's the deal. A risk limiting audit is a good thing to do, with a more intensive audit at times, after the results are certified. A risk limiting audit literally requires our clerks to open ballot boxes. You are literally taking ballots out of the box. You stick a colored slip of paper in between the ballots. Where that ballot goes, you're literally touching ballots, handling ballots. You are looking at everything from the very top to the very bottom of that voter. And she wants to do that before the results are certified. So she wants individuals and clerks to go into ballot boxes prior to the election results being certified. It sounds great and it sounds fancy, but having non-certified results, this to me creates an entire chain of custody issue with our ballots. Ballots must be, in my opinion, secured, locked. The results must be certified by the Board of Canvassers, and then we start to address issues from there. So no one should be touching any of that stuff until the Board of Canvassers have certified these are the election results. Then we can go in and we can start to deal with it. That's the way the current law is. You as a candidate are not allowed to submit a recount until the vote is certified. Because what are you recounting? You need to recount the actual certified vote. And so to me, that's another hard no. We need to have the vote certified. We need to know what the baseline is. Then we can go in and start messing with those ballots. And I'm using messing in loose terms. It's not really messing. It's recounting, auditing, doing all of that after the vote has been certified and finalized. So out of this entire list of things, let's talk about in-person voting and why I'm soft on it. There is no doubt a number of people have and will continue to vote using the absentee ballot. Again, the only way for us to change that is to amend our state constitution. Over 63% of the residents of Michigan passed Proposal 3. I think it would be extremely challenging to eliminate no reason absentee. Just, I think politically, I'm not sure that a majority of the Michigan residents would vote to do that. They might if it's part of an overall larger election package. But I don't know. So here's my issues. If the choices laid before us are continuing to allow everyone to vote via absentee ballot and the clerks have to process them early, or allowing people to vote in person early, I will pick vote in person early versus absentee ballots being processed early every day of the week and twice on Sunday. And here is why. When I mail in my absentee ballot and the clerk has it and they start to process it early, that doesn't mean they're processing it through the tabulator early. It means they're they're checking my signature, they're opening the security sleeve, they're taking my ballot and the security sleeve out of the original envelope. What the Secretary of State really wants to do is they really want to go all the way up to the point of potentially feeding that ballot into the tabulator where it's now laying around. So they technically are doing things like, let's allow the processing of ballots early. We're going to take it out. We're going to cut off the zip tie. We're going to verify the signature. We're going to take it out of the security sleeve. We're going to flatten it on the table and we're going to pile them up on election day. I personally adamantly oppose having voted ballots being stacked up on a desk until a week later when they start to get ran through a tabulator. When you vote in person early, you as the individual are literally walking into your clerk's office. You are voting, and just like in your polling location, you are feeding your ballot into the tabulator machine. So there's a difference. So if, again, I have to pick between I want to vote early and I want to feed my ballot into the tabulation machine, I know it's in, I know it's counted, it's been voted. They can't tabulate that until after election day because it closes the machine down. Or if I have to decide, do you want my ballot to sit on a clerk's desk? No, I would prefer that I be allowed to vote in person early if I need to. So I'm not saying this is an either or. I'm not saying we have to do one or the other, but here's the choice we're coming to. There's a number of municipalities around Michigan that didn't get their counting done until Wednesday. And I think we can all agree, counting ballots through the night is a load of crap, and we shouldn't allow it to happen. We should stop the time. We have a few choices. We have to either stop the time people count ballots. Our election workers start at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. Them counting from 6 o'clock in the morning through 6 o'clock the next day, a majority of our poll workers are seniors. I don't know how these people survive, to be frank. I'm 35 years old and I have a hard time pulling an all-nighter now. It takes me a month to recover, let alone our election people who are actively working. I mean, it is tough work. It's not easy doing all of this processing. So we have to give somewhere. Either we have to stop counting ballots and come back the next day, which creates a lot of security issues. People ask questions. Or in every hour that we go past the close of polls on election day, people just start to get antsy. What's taking so long? Why can't they count the ballots? How many are there? What are the vote totals? So the further we get out from the close of polls, the more people start to question our election results. But if we get past 10, 11 o'clock at night and we have to stop counting, that creates a whole nother list of issues. Ballot integrity, security of our election system, what's going to happen to all of those ballots sitting there? So if we can't do that, I would rather potentially have in-person voting ahead of time where you can walk in and you know your ballot's been counted, it's secured, it's through the processor. I'm not saying any of these are great decisions, and I have no idea what the right answer is. I know it's an issue. I think we need to collectively work together to try to figure out what is the best way to solve it. And if we all stop, or if we all go in person on election day, we're still going to have the post results. We are still going to have an issue where the ballots are going to come in and we're going to have election workers working past a certain time. And frankly, I just think that that's wrong. I personally would support something like our poll workers can't work past X amount of hours, and then we either have to cycle them out, which I know why they don't, or we have to create another way to create some integrity in the system where we are not literally running our poll workers to death on election day. Kim, I'll be honest with you, voting counts. Voting really matters. I know people are frustrated. I am frustrated. We have to fix the system. But here's the deal, guys. If we don't vote, this is a self-fulfilling prophecy. The other side is going to vote. They're going to check the box. We have to do a better job. We have to stop getting outplayed. We have to stop getting outwitted. We have to step up. We have to make sure people are working at the polls. We have to make sure that we are doing everything that we can, and elections have consequences. I said this back in 2018, and I'm going to say it again, and I've been saying it like I feel like I'm banging my head against a brick wall. Back in 2018, I told anybody that would listen to me, do not lose the Secretary of State's race. He who controls elections is incredibly powerful. If Bill Schuette was going to win or lose, okay. Tom Leonard, I personally know him. He would have been such a great attorney general compared to our one who talks about the pimple poppers and other. Our attorney general is an abomination. She is such an embarrassment. However, we could not lose the Secretary of State's race. No matter what we did, we could not lose the Secretary of State's race. And I'm going to say it this year, guys. I want to beat the governor. I think that she is tone deaf. I think that she has fundamentally harmed. I think she is acting unconstitutional. She's a unilateral dictator who is on a power trip. But I think that we collectively need to do everything that we possibly can to ensure that we beat the Secretary of State. We have to take control back of our elections, or the Democrats are going to do everything they can to fundamentally change our election laws. And that leads me into my next point. There's a reason why I read the Secretary of State's headlines. This is intentional. This is coordinated. The Secretary of State has literally come out in the past like this. I want to be allowed to process absentee ballots early. And some third party goes out and sues the Secretary of State's office to process ballots early. It's in our best interest to protect the integrity of our person's vote for us to allow the processing of absentee ballots early. So what happens is she has the ACL sue. She has the NAACP. She has the Association for the Retired Americans. She has other organizations go out and sue her. So that's like me saying, hey guys, I want to clean up our voter, or I want to eliminate the signature requirements on checking absentee ballots. And suddenly, the NAACP sues me to eliminate the checking of the signature requirement because the legislature won't work with me, those piddly legislators. And so then what happens is I have now told you what I want, you sued me for it, and I get to go to court and say, I have to defend the state law, but so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to settle and compromise, and eventually we'll just eliminate the checking of the signatures. It is literally a coordinated attack. The Secretary of State proposes, instead of having the legislature dispose, she works with outside groups to sue her. And this is coordinated. This is literally coordinated from Dems at the Secretary of State's level. The Democrats learned very smartly in 2016 when President Trump won. This was a long-term gain for them. They ran liberal Secretary of States funded by George Soros and Zuckerberg and others across states in the United States to take the Secretary of State's office strategically, just like they are doing with prosecutors. Anybody that lives in Livingston County, just look to our south with what that crazy Washtenaw County prosecutor is doing. Same exact thing. They have their spots, they know where they can make a difference, and they're coming in and they're running candidates that are going to run their agenda. So we have accessibility of the elections, we have to protect the infrastructure of our elections, and we have to secure and ensure secure elections. So let's look at this. H.R. 1. Last year, Alyssa Slotkin got elected as a freshman, and she came guns a-blazing because one of her biggest campaign promises when she ran in 2018 was fixing our election system, taking the money out of the election system. So she bragged constantly that she signed on as a co-sponsor to H.R. 1. What is H.R. 1? Well, I'm telling every single person on this live stream, you should absolutely know what H.R. 1 is because it's been reintroduced this year. The Democrats now control the House, they control the Senate, and H.R. 1 on the federal level is a federalization of our state's elections. It is literally a federal takeover, and take Proposal 3, promote the vote, make it on a federal level, and then pass it for all states. That is what H.R. 1 is. So our Secretary of State literally made a 19 legislative bullet-pointed proposal today about accessibility, infrastructure, and secure elections. The first 3 bullet points about H.R. 1, access, ensure security, promoting integrity. Pretty much the same thing. They literally go bullet point by bullet point. They have their federal talking points. The state Secretary of States on the Democrat level are funneling that down, and they are passing fundamental election changes from the top down. We have to get conservative, constitutional Republicans elected to our county clerk's office, which there already is here in Livingston, thank goodness, to our local clerk's offices, which most of our township clerks here in Livingston are, thank goodness, but we need them in every county across Michigan. We need them in every local municipality across Michigan. And then whatever we do, in addition to beating the governor, but I think more importantly in 2022, we have to do everything we can to elect a new Secretary of State. And if any of you have had to renew your license lately, that shouldn't be hard to do because her branch services suck. All she's doing, and this today to me proves it. We have people who I have literally talked to that can't get their driver's license renewed until April or May, but don't worry, she has time to create a 19-bill election package. She doesn't have time to verify the Unlock Michigan petitions, but she has time to create a 19-bill legislative package to fundamentally change our election system. She's not doing her job. She's doing a part of her job that will fundamentally transform Michigan to help Democrats forever. So it is really, really, really important that we get out to vote. I know it is frustrating. I know that it seems that it doesn't matter, but I can promise to you it does. And there's a lot of people working on all spectrums to make sure that the system is better. I will be the first one to admit we can point fingers all we want. We can point fingers at the Democrats. The Republican Party did plenty of things wrong this time. We have to look in our own backyard before we start to look at other people's backyards. We need Republicans that are going to hold each other accountable. We need to finally fulfill the promises that we make to the voters and the residents that we live in. We can't renege. We have to stand up. We have to speak to the residents and just be honest. We're not going to agree all the time, but we need to be honest. And we need people who are going to fight for our rights and our freedoms and to do the right thing. It's not going to be easy. But we need candidates on every single level that are going to do this. And if that happens, and if we look in our own backyard, if we do a better job of getting poll workers, if we do a better job of training poll challengers, and frankly, there's a myriad of things that this election cycle back in 2020 that I can point fingers and I'm pissed off about. Let's look at the number of lawsuits that happened prior to the November 2020 election. Changing dates, mailing out AV applications, ballot signatures, counting of ballots, processing of earlies. The Michigan legislature, a lot of people, they've done a lot of things wrong. They've done some things right. They've done a lot of things wrong. They sued the Secretary of State consistently on our behalf to stop election changes. The Republican Party didn't. Presidential campaigns didn't. Congressional campaigns didn't. They all had legal standing. They all had legal standings to file motions to become parties to those lawsuits. They had legal standings to at least file an amicus brief. We had outside organizations that did, but not campaigns, not the state party. I have really big issues with that. We need to be more proactive. We knew going into 2020 that we were going to be in legal battle for our lives. Newsflash, guys, we're going to be in a legal battle for our lives in 22. If you think what Whitmer and Benson did in 20, it looks like child's play compared to what's coming in 22. If we don't learn from this, we have no, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice. Well, I messed that up. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And that is exactly what we have. We know what we are in for in 22. We have to do a better job of prepping, preparing, and playing the game that they play. That's kind of where I'm at, y'all. Okay. Let's see here. I tried to answer questions as I went. I absolutely agree with every comment that I saw related to voter ID. I think one of the best things that we absolutely have to do is you need a voter ID. You need a driver's license for everything. I think it is absolutely ludicrous that we don't need an ID to vote. And I think we absolutely have to have voter ID. 100%. All right. Are there any big burning questions that you guys have asked that I have missed, that you want me to make sure that I answer? Is she still pushing for licenses for illegals? Tyler, I'd have to look into that. That topic has kind of taken a back burner. And I agree with you, Denise. There will be there's not going to be a lot of parties if we don't get this fixed. It's not just the Republican Party. The Democrats have their own issues as well. I agree. We have to restore the integrity of our election system. And again, I will be the first to admit I'm a leader in the Republican Party, but I have my little box here in Livingston County. But we have our own things here and further up the chain that we all need to address. To say that we don't is just being ignorant. And I think it's okay to acknowledge when we've made mistakes and how we have to improve them going forward to restore the faith and the integrity in our system. On those notes, if you want to get involved, I would love to have you involved. Running as a precinct delegate, if you're interested in running as a candidate, if you just want to get involved, if you want to help knock doors, being a poll worker is one of the best things you can do, being a poll challengers. I've given you guys my phone number before. I'll actually edit the post so it's in there again. I've talked to a number of people over the last week who are just fed up. They've never been involved. They want to be involved. There's a little way that everybody can help. And I know we are all frustrated and it's really easy to walk away. But I can promise you guys, for every person we walk away, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like saying, well, the Democrats are just going to win, so we're not going to vote. Well, I can guarantee you the Democrats are going to win. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. If we all walk away and stop voting, we're done. Our country's screwed and we lose it. So we all need to scrap. I'm 35 years old and I'm scrapping every single day for my kids' future. And frankly, I'm going to scrap until my knuckles are bloody and bare and there is nothing left to scrap with. Because I really love this country and I want them to grow up in the same exact country that I have. And so we can't give up. It's too important to give up. All right, guys. If I see any other questions, I usually go back through the comments. I will try to answer them. Thank you all. Have a great evening, and I can't wait to see you guys again. God bless and enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks, guys.